Heyo everybody, Haku here with my live reaction or read through for Tower of God, Urek Mazino, Chapter 29. And this one, we might have a little bit of discussion before we even get into reading. I guess I'll try not to have it be too long, but we discussed a lot last week, and we had a lot going on from comments and other people's opinions and stuff. So there's been a lot of people. I've seen it not just in my comment section, but because I watch everybody else react, really. Everybody else's comment section being like, oh, just wait. I don't remember how many weeks, a certain number of weeks. And please don't give really specific details like that, but you'll have a lot to talk about. So apparently even more is happening. I don't know if that's even more in a good way, even more in a bad way, but even more is happening. And also it could be something where whether it's in a good or bad way depends on how you take it. So far, last week's chapter, I enjoyed. I had fun doing last week's video and everything, but I do think the writing decisions are heavily, heavily questionable. And it's the same kind of heavily, heavily questionable of season 3 of the main series. So, Seiyu's still doing it. And also, again, hearing all of your opinions in the comments and stuff. A lot of other people really didn't like the chapter or where things are going. But for me, something that just happened to me a lot in season 3 was, oh wow, we do this game or this fight or we have this subplot going on, and I'm like, I really like this subplot. I really like this fight. I really like this game. But we hit a point where we don't do a conclusion to any of that. Instead, Seiyu just says, okay, I'm writing something different now. And maybe if it's a fight, we'll just cut back, and the next time we see the characters, they won't be fighting anymore. They'll be doing something completely different. The fight's just gone. Doesn't exist anymore. Or we'll be in the middle of a game, and instead of having some sort of conclusion, and it's fine to interrupt a game and turn it into something bigger, like so many long-running shonen do that. It's totally fine to do that every once in a while, but when it's like every single time, no conclusion, just we end here, and then we're just doing something different now. Seiyu's like, I don't care about this game anymore. I don't care if you as a reader cared about it. We're not doing it anymore. I don't care about this fight anymore. I don't care about this subplot anymore. And something that I saw people in the comments bringing up, I don't know if it was my comments or somebody else's, people bringing up, again, spoilers for the main series, but if you're reading this, you probably should have read the main series. People talking about Doom and Dawan's deaths, if they're actually dead, where they're like, for me, they didn't seem like deaths. They weren't portrayed as all that serious. And like, we saw Doom get sniped in the head before and was fine, but then they were acting like they were dead, so I guess they're dead. But if they're dead, that's so dumb. People were bringing that up in comments where we had entire arcs, entire, dozen chapter long subplots revolving around Doom and Dawan. And so to not even give them like a real death, to just be like, okay, they're dead now, we're moving. It's so bad. like, to be fair, as much as I want to be as light as possible on criticism, that is just bad writing. That is just bad. But it's kind of similar here. I just wanted to bring that up because that's an example that people were bringing up. But I have liked the spinoff so much. I've had fun with these characters. I've had fun with these subplots. And a big thing that a bunch of people brought up in the comments, that was one of my big things that I talked about too, is I like this. I like what's going on. I like the subplots. So the main overarching focus that we had right now was our conflict was this test. What are we going to do about this test? How are we going to pass this test while also dealing with all the Phantaminum stuff in the background, Urek's duel with Donjon and all that? How are we going to solve this problem? How are we going to deal with it? And then we got all of this stuff go down. Urek comes up with a solution. Nobody sits on the throne, and we all pass. And it's like, okay, cool. How are we going to make that happen? Now we have this new twist to the conflict, and again, it's really straight. Like, I'm not saying everything has to be the most simple or the most straightforward, but there comes a point when you're just not writing things in order very well. Things like, I'm getting a little off topic, but, it seemed like we had a straightforward story with, okay, Phantaminum takes these original Shining Ones, turns them into jewels, disappears or whatever. Urek is found as a child, and we don't know what happens from there. We have a blank period from there to when he ends up in the tower. But now Urek knows other Shining Ones. There's some more detail there that we don't know about. Does that come within that gap? Why would this Shining One be a jewel in the tower? What do we not know there? Was what we were told at the very beginning out of order? I just feel like CU could have just told the story in a more straightforward way and it would have been fine, because we already had depth. That's not saying it doesn't have depth or layers, because we already had depth or layers and mysteries. We already had him climbing the tower, but with the added depth and mystery of what's going on with Phantaminum, what's going on with the followers of Phantaminum. But continuing with what I was saying, Urek came up with a plan. And so then it's like, okay, this is our solution to the conflict. How are we going to make that solution happen? And then we have this twist where the angels get involved. And because of them getting involved, Gogo Jung takes the throne. So it's like, oh no, all of our plans have gone bad. Now comes a new threat, a new sort of, a new conflict for the characters to deal with. The queen is down. Urek is occupied. Somebody's sitting on the throne and they're being guarded by one of the angels. What do we do? This is a twist that throws everything our characters were doing upside down. Now what do our characters do? But then CU just says, there's no conclusion to that. Last week's chapter wasn't a conclusion. Last week's chapter was, I'm tired of writing that. I'm going to write something different now. And the question is why? Why not just continue with what we were doing because what we were doing was good? Why just say, I'm tired of writing this, let's write something different? Especially when a lot of the justification they gave, and this is something I brought up in the discussion for last chapter, the justification is like, okay, this new test, it's going to be too tough for even rankers. We were already doing that. That's what they said before. And it made more sense before. Because before it was like, we think we're going into a normal test. The officials of the tower think it's going to be a normal test. But actually the bad guys, the angels, they're manipulating things behind the scenes and causing it to be too difficult for even a ranker. And that is like a big part of the conflict, and it really hypes up our characters, especially obviously Urek, he's the titular main character. So we were already doing that, and the angels are like, ha, little do you know, but this time we're going to be running the show. We're going to be deciding the test. They were already doing that. 2 out of the 5 teachers were in with the angels, and the head director, the one deciding the test, the one who set it up in a way that the queen was supposed to be this wild card to make it extra difficult, but then we got this cool twist where the queen actually formed this bond with Evelyn, was also one of the angels. Like, we already had this. And a lot of people, I think anytime you bring up stuff like alternate timelines or time travel, like I said before, almost always a bad thing, almost always going to make your story worse. And a lot of people were saying that they weren't fans of that either. So while I enjoyed and had fun with last week's chapter, a lot of these writing decisions are just, I guess, outright bad. Because we really are taking a conflict, saying, that conflict doesn't matter, I don't care anymore. I'm not writing about that conflict anymore. If you cared, screw you. I don't want to write that anymore. We're writing something completely different. It's like, okay, we could have at least wrapped it up. We could have continued with that conflict or stretched that conflict, transitioned it into what's coming next instead of, I don't care anymore, we're doing something different. So now, like, oh no, we've lost the queen. Doesn't really matter. Oh no, Gogo Jung sat on the throne. That really doesn't matter. We've really given up on a lot of that. So it's not very good. And we're just moving into things. And I mentioned before, like with again, it doesn't need to be just super simple and straightforward and spoon-fed to you. But there comes a point when you're throwing in, and this is something else that CU does, you're throwing in so many ideas, so many concepts, so many subplots. And then the ideal when you're writing a story is, Chekhov's gun and everything. If you're introducing a subplot, if you're introducing an idea, you're going to use it, you're going to take it through to some conclusion. But what CU did so much throughout season 3 and even at the very late end of season 2 is we'll go into an arc and we'll get a bunch of characters and subplots and ideas thrown at us, and then we'll carry out the arc and we'll go to the next arc, and you'll be like, hold on. So if you go back and read the beginning of some of those arcs, like late season 2, season 3, it's like we're introduced to these characters, these ideas, these subplots, and then somewhere along the way, CU just stops writing them, and we go and we move on to the next arc, and there will be like arc subplots that just vanish or just get introduced and then never mentioned again. They're just things that go absolutely nowhere. And it kind of feels like we're continuing with the main series in that way. So again, I guess long Haku intro, but after getting my own thoughts out last week and then seeing everybody else's thoughts, I thought it was maybe good to like run through what I'm thinking going into this before I do. But like also we're like, the reason I brought that last point up is we already had plenty of things in the mix. We had the regulars, we had Urek, we had the conspiracy going on behind the scenes with the directors and the angels and everything. We had whatever's going on with the island. We have whatever's going on with Phantaminum. We have whatever's going on with Mago. And all of that stuff is interconnected. But those are all like different subplots and plot points that are all connected. And it's like, okay, how are we going to flesh out their connections? How are we going to discover what they're about and resolve them? But we're still throwing Asa on top of this. We're throwing the Kun family and their involvement on top of this. And we're continuing to throw things on top of something we've already got when we're already dropping storylines. We're already not completing storylines. And I just think I'd like us to complete these storylines and then introduce some, or it just feels like when we're introduced to these storylines, there's no strong tie-in, no strong reason to care, given that, so we were introduced to Asa, the ruler of the floor last time, or it said like the fallen ruler of the floor. Does that mean they're still currently ruler or whatever? Or are they the previous ruler? I think they're the current ruler, but who knows? But I would not be the most shocked ever if we never saw Asa again. I'm expecting Asa to be important, but if Asa wasn't important, if we just basically never even saw Asa, I'd be like, you know what happened to Asa, but that's happened so much in Tower of God. We're throwing in the Kun family's involvement, and it's like, we already have things that I want to see. We already have subplots that I enjoy. Can we focus on those? Can we develop those? Can we conclude those? I don't think the Kun family needs this. I don't think they need this. And then if the Kun family gets involved, what's their involvement going to be like? Is it going to be just not important whatsoever and like why bother including them? Or are they going to completely take over the story and we're going to forget about other subplots because of them? So there's a lot to be concerned about story-wise. But if this does turn out to be a bit of a train wreck like the main series' last arc, I guess, we'll be here to sit and watch the train wreck. But either way, let's actually start reading episode 29, A New Test Part 1. We have Evelyn, Rue, and the Queen. She was the first friend I ever... Damn! We're starting off strong, man. Who didn't turn violent when I touched them. For the first time in my life, I became friends with an animal. And I don't think it'll ever happen again. Evelyn, Rue? Urek? How's Evelyn holding up? I don't think she's doing too well. I'm sorry. If only I'd gotten here faster. And we have this guy. Don't really like or care about this guy. He's just a boring nobody guy who was kind of colluding with Chungum at this point. Hold on, that shirt. Glancing back and forth. That's the same one you're wearing. Yeah. He tries to run. Stop right there. Urek, going with this move again, pinning him down. Urek, I'm so sorry. I was only following the angel's orders. I'm sorry. Quiet. Don't worry, I'm not going to kill you. as long as you answer all my questions. Actually, this one's for both of you. Tell me about the island that smells of salt. Alright, I'll tell you what I know. I mean, do not most islands smell of salt? I feel like that sort of comes... I mean, unless they're in the middle of a lake, maybe. I feel like that perhaps comes with the whole island thing. I'll tell you what I know. Once things calm down a bit here. Attention, the crown game has ended early. All regulars in the testing area will now be transferred to the cruise ship. I'd be potentially so pissed if I were any regular. I mean, I suppose this gives you a free ride. You don't get screwed over by Chungum or Gogojung sitting on the throne. But it's like, okay, so none of that test mattered. What about the people who died for it? Nothing mattered? What was his name? Sanjo? Died for nothing? Ended early. What the heck is going on? Neo. Urek. Do I have Rohan? Rohan. They're ending the game already? Things were just getting interesting. Now I can't even exercise my authority as king. So that's Gogojung, huh? Hey you. Gogojung, is it? Did you not hear me say that I'd end you if you sat on the throne with the crown? Yeah, right. What do you think you are, the king of this test site? It's funny how you act like the main character when you don't even have the power to back it up. Let's go. That's probably why you lost the game in the first place, loser. What did you say? Come on, Aru. We're the victors. It's time to celebrate and relax. Huh? Oh, sure. That little. The cruise after the conclusion of the test. Alright. I don't understand. Why did they end the test early? Beats me. Okay, so Bichon is okay. Beats me. When I regained consciousness, I found myself here. Gah, no one has an answer then? Settle down, all of you. Look, it's the head director. And Rahab is back. What happened to the jewel in his mask? Oh, I suppose that's what he ate. Head director Rahab? What happened to him? Is it me, or does he look injured? I'm sure many of you were confused by the sudden termination of the test. The crown game you just participated in was forced to halt due to an unexpected intrusion and the ensuing conflict. During that, 3 commendable test directors, so Gisli is down, damn, Gisli, Fedre, and Baskerville, lost their lives. Hold on, the puppy's dead? That's why we made the decision to end the test and proceed with the next test under the authority of new test directors. The team with the regular Gogojung, who was seated upon the throne with the crown at the time of the interruption, will be recognized as the only team to have passed the test and will be exempt from the next test. Okay, so Aru and the blonde guy whose name I'm forgetting are safe. And then everyone glares at Aru for celebrating. We've got the princess, I suppose that's the princess's sniper teammate. Wild that Fox ended up dying too, and Bluey there. Now, I will introduce the new test directors. And, okay, we have Chungum, potentially Leo, maybe this is Leo, and Goldfish Girl. Hold on, those people. Leo, Mono, and Lapis. Also, I totally forgot. Neo and Leo, because we're dealing with a split timeline, Neo and Leo could be the same person but from the 2 different timelines. These 3 test directors will replace the deceased ones. I thought about that after last chapter, at some point during the week, but I forgot to say anything in the intro. Will replace the deceased ones. In addition, I hereby transfer the position of head test director to Leo here. What? We have a new head director now. I didn't know that was possible. It's great to meet you all. My name's Leo. As Rahab said, I'll be your new head test director. No way. We don't even know who you are. Do you really know the others? You can't just do this without any warning. I mean, I don't see what sort of a huge difference it makes to the randoms who I get why it would make a difference to somebody like Urek who knows what's going on, but for the randoms who don't know what's going on, I don't see the huge difference for them. They look alike. I completely understand your confusion. I assure you that we will address this situation and ensure that all future tests proceed without issue. From now on, there will be no more position training, and the position test will only take a single attempt. If you pass your position test and the final test, you will all pass. And proceed to the next floor. What? So you're saying we can advance to the next floor after passing just 2 more tests? Sounds good to me. Same here, I like this plan. Or I like his plan. Yeah, let's go with this. And we have another blonde person who looks exactly the same as the other, the blonde guy. I'm on board. He's already won them all over. The simplest route's the best. Since we're all in agreement, we will proceed with the additional tests. Please, try to get some rest. Rue's cabin. Alright, tell me about the island that smells of salt. The first thing I remember is waking up on a small island. It was a strange place, full of people wearing t-shirts with an extron on them. They were called ascetics, and they went on what they called a pilgrimage whenever a land bridge opened up in the ocean. They believed they'd find salvation if they managed to reach the island on the other side, and that's probably where the ascetics were then sacrificed to Mago. However, the path was guarded by angels, who bestowed upon the ascetics a trial in the form of death. I was no exception. I went through the trial and met my end. It was painful, but also oddly soothing, like I was finally going back to where I was meant to be. And when I opened my eyes, I saw the ascetics, who had died alongside me while trying to cross the path. They had all come back to life. What? They came back from the dead? Maybe they were being split from one timeline to the other? Yes. The island was full of ascetics who'd been killed by the angels, and they didn't even remember their own deaths. The cycle kept repeating. The resurrected ascetics would go through their days lethargically, until hope for salvation surfaced again. Then they'd begin their pilgrimage once more, and be slaughtered once more. After that they would be resurrected and return to the island. I witnessed this cycle of death and resurrection dozens of times. So you were the only one who could remember all of this? Yes, but why? Back then I had no idea. A part of me even wondered if I had been placed under a curse. Being the only one who could remember made it especially painful. Then one day, I met a one-eyed monster that called itself the administrator of the tower. Wait, I met that thing too! Same here. The administrator told me the island I was on was a separate dimension created by a force outside the tower, and that it exists outside of the tower's laws, and I'd been placed on the island as a counter-agent created by the tower. So, this is again stuff that I feel like we didn't need. So, the tower itself is already mysterious, and we already have, places created within the tower and stuff. So, having an extra-dimensional force create a place in the tower is a bit much, that it feels like we don't need. We could have told this story without that and had it just been, just as interesting. And that it exists outside of the tower's laws, and I'd been placed on the island as a counter agent created by the tower to resist that external force. According to the administrator, if I were to follow the tower's rules, pass the test, and ascend to the next floor, cracks would form in that external power, and the curse on the island might be lifted. Basically, that monster was saying the reason you were the only one able to remember what happened is because you're a counter-agent created by the tower to resist some kind of external force. So he's basically like a white blood cell for the tower. And him passing tests for some reason would cause a waning in the outside force that's creating the island, which I guess is a part of the split timeline. But again, all of this makes I mean, you could say it makes little sense, but in the tower, anything's possible, whatever. So I'm not going to argue that it makes little sense, though I think it's easy to argue that. I'm going to argue that we could have written the story without this. It would have been more straightforward, just as good. We don't need to throw this into the mix, because then anytime we have any sort of conflict in the main story or with the world building or anything, we could just say, you know, why not do this? Why doesn't this just happen? Yes, according to the administrator, that's why I was selected as a regular. Makes sense. But I don't understand why I was chosen in the first place. Being in the towers made me realize just how weak and insignificant I am. Someone like me climbing the tower? It's impossible. And on top of that, the angels are going to try to stop me every step of the way. I'm just a useless, cursed kid. That's all I am. Rue, I don't know why I was given such an important responsibility. Keep your head up, Rue. Remember, the tower chose you, and so did I. Also, I know what's at the root of this curse. Once that's gone, the curse will be lifted too, I'm sure of it. So the external power, I'm thinking, may just be Mago, not even Phantaminum, it just may be Mago. Because they mentioned before, the Kun family was mentioning a distortion caused by whatever was at the island, and that whatever was causing the distortion went away, and they were going to hide out in the castle until whatever was causing the distortion came back. So presumably that was Mago leaving to go talk to Urek, and then Mago coming back would be what they're waiting for. I'll make sure you get to the next floor, so don't you worry, alright? I'll help too. Evelyn, thank you for watching out for me. I know you already have so much to worry about. Of course, don't even mention it. Hello? What about me? We're making it to the next floor no matter what. Yes, then we'll get our revenge on those test directors. Angels as if. They're more like demons. That's right, Evelyn. Hey, I'm still here. We have Nao listening in. Rue? I promise. I'll remember you too, Nao. So does he not remember Nao since he hasn't reacted to anything? Or is he just trying to keep Nao secret for whatever reason? But also, I like Rue a lot less now. I think, to pardon my French, and potentially, you know, people don't like cursing in videos sometimes, but I don't really care. Fuck these plot points. Why do this? I don't want this. I don't care about this. Get this out of my story, please. The story that I am reading, I do not want this involved. Fuck these plot points. Fuck these characters, like Rue. The villains are hateable, or at least were hateable in a fun way, but now throwing in all of these concepts, if you wanted to write about this, just write a different story. Just say, I'm sick of writing Tower of God. I've been writing Tower of God over 10 years. I want to write something different. And just forget about Urek. Write this as its own thing if you want to do this stuff. Again, as somebody who's been reading Tower of God since 2011, 15 years now, fuck these plot points. Fuck these characters. I don't care about any of this. I don't want any of this. Yeah. Not a fan at all of any of it. It makes me like the spinoff less. It makes me like the overarching Tower of God series less. It makes me like Rue less. The following day, I swear, when I catch whoever killed my puppy. Again, that's something that I've brought up before, where people are like, oh, you can't have Bomb climb the tower forever. If it was just about Bomb climbing the tower, I think it'd be a better story. I think it'd be a lot better. And it's like, oh, you know, it would be really simplistic if this was just Urek climbing the tower. It'd be better. It'd be better if it was just Urek climbing the tower. If it was just him forming relationships with these regulars, taking the tests, that would be more exciting than this. And then whenever I catch whoever killed my puppy, he sees Chungum, walks past. Hey, I killed your puppy. Just kill. And again, we run into the place as well where Urek could just kill these guys, it feels like. Just kill these guys. And that's another problem with Urek being such an OP protagonist, is like, just kill these guys. He stops. And we end there. Yeah, this sucked again. Last chapter I had fun, but I thought a lot of the plot points and decision making from CU as an author weren't very good. This just sucked. I had less fun this time. Like, I had fun talking to all of you, but when it came to the actual story itself, it's not fun. Like, the characters are worse, the story's worse, the world building's worse. And this is something I also thought about before coming to record when I was thinking about, like, the intro and stuff that I didn't say in the intro. CU wrote back in, like, 2011, 2012 through the blog posts and stuff, this lore that people loved for a decade. It's like, people loved this lore for a decade. People loved these stories that you wrote for a decade. And he spent the past, like, 5 years or so just trying to unwrite all of it, and I just don't get why. Like with the main series where we get so many retcons and so many lore discrepancies with the blog posts, it's like people liked those. People liked that lore. People liked that world building. That was one of Tower of God's biggest praises. Why are you trying to unwrite the best aspects of your story? Why are you trying to unwrite things that people liked? And that's continuing to happen here, where he's just like, oh, you liked these things? Never mind. They're not what you thought they were. They're not what I wrote them to be. We're completely changing all of it. That's things like with Adori's showing up, being an REA and stuff. It's like people loved the idea of Adori, her being the head of the Royal Guard and all of that, and, you know, the golden hair and everything, being so much like Zahard, being the, you know, sort of most Zahard-like princess and everything, and then just saying, never mind, we're not doing that. Why? People liked that stuff. And if Adori being an REA means we don't get Hagafarion and means we don't get a connection there between Hagafarion and Hone and Joaquin, then it's like, why? That was all stuff that people liked. Why unwrite things that people liked? And if the princess here, since we're so far back in time, if this princess ends up being Eurasia N, even though she looks nothing like Eurasia N, again, that'll be another just terrible, terrible plot point. Like, why would you just decide to take this thing that people like, that people have liked for 15 years, and spend like 5 years going, oh, this thing you liked? Actually, it's not that. And just taking everything that you enjoyed about something and just saying, okay, no, never mind. We're unwriting it. He spent, 10 years writing Tower of God and then the past 5 years unwriting Tower of God. And I just don't get it. I don't get why you would say, hey, this thing that I did that was good, let me just make it worse. Hey, this thing that people liked, let me make it unlikable. I just don't get it. I don't understand. I don't get it at all. And it seems from comments that aside from the, like, maybe Webtoons comics or comments, which are always going to be a Reddit tier circle jerk, and Reddit, which has always been a terrible circle jerk, aside from stuff like that, most of the comments seem to agree with stuff like this, especially with the Korean comments, where I have disagreed with them plenty in the past, but their criticisms, while incredibly harsh, I was like, damn, man, you don't have to go that far. You don't have to say all of that. They are calling things out as they are quite often when it comes to late season 3 and into what we're doing now. And while I've enjoyed the spinoff so much, and again, I've spent a decade and a half loving Tower of God, and again, a decade now, making videos, spending hours on Tower of God, making videos on Tower of God every week. I just, again, as somebody with that kind of long-term investment, not that I'm saying that makes my opinion or my thoughts more valuable than anybody else's, but just using it to say, that's how invested I've been. That's how long-term I've been. To be like, what are you doing for years now? And it's like taking breaks don't help, moving away from the main series into the side series doesn't help. I just don't know what happened with CU or his team or editorial at Neverline, whatever. I don't know what happened to get us to this point where things were going so smoothly for years and years to things going so unsmoothly for years and years, and being like, how did I often said it with like One Piece. How did the person who wrote Wano write the rest of One Piece earlier before that? Because there's such a vast gap in quality. And this is another thing where it's like, how did the Seiyuu who wrote the beginning of Tower of God through like Hidden Floor-ish, but the cracks were already starting to show by the time we got to Floor of Death, really. How'd the Seiyuu who wrote that write season 3 and onward? It's just, I don't get unwriting your story. I get if you're introducing new plot points and new elements and those aren't landing, but I don't get why you would have something that is working, why you would take things that are good, like the lore and world building and stuff, things that people pretty much universally praised, and I get introducing new plot points and them not working, but I don't get why you would say, oh, those previous plot points that did work, I'm just going to mess them all up. And again, the complaints I had in the intro and all, where it's like, why are you taking your series and why as an author are you writing things and then just not paying them off, not concluding them, just saying, I don't care, I'm not writing this anymore, I'm writing something different. Why are we just doing that to plot points, to characters, any of that? And here again, we're introducing so many new characters and plot points, and we're just throwing new things at us, and you're expecting us to care when so far what we just got from the last arc here of this spinoff, and from what we got consistently again and again, late season 2, all through season 3, why would you expect us to care anymore when you're introducing new concepts and new characters, when at any point we're just going to be like, okay, Seiyuu doesn't care about those characters anymore, we're never seeing them again. Seiyuu doesn't care about those plot points anymore, they are being left unresolved for forever or being retconned into something that they totally weren't. So yeah, this is completely falling apart writing wise. You've seen me praise it for 27 chapters straight, have fun but criticize it last week, and now just admit that the writing was never the strongest in the spinoff. I was just having fun despite the writing not being the strongest or anything. But now it's like, it feels like it's completely unraveled. It has fallen apart, and what the series was 2 chapters ago is not even what the series is this chapter. So yeah, that's where we end, I guess. Thank you for watching. Like if you did like the video, comment down there to tell me what you thought of the chapter, my thoughts and reaction and all that. Subscribe for more Tower of God, much more on the channel. Follow on Twitter if you want. If you want a link to the Discord server, it's free and open for anyone. If you want to help support the channel by sharing around or dropping a super thanks, it's appreciated. If you want to help support the channel by becoming a member or patron, hit join down below to become a member. Go to patreon.com/HakuOfTheTubes, or a link will be in the description to become a patron. Thank you so much to people who are already members and patrons. Thank you to chosen regulars Evan Hawley and Bertie Wooster, Magical Girls, The D-Ban and Baru, Cheriton Student, David Langstaff, Slayer Candidates, SG and Stan Cedar, and Pure Elements, Pater Dale, and Elsa the Storyteller. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.